Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent game to share with you from round 3 of the 2025 Tata Steel Masters on the white end Max Warmerdam playing against Nodirbek Abdusattorov. All right, on board we have Ruy Lopez. A big positional battle in this one for sure. Eventually we'll see this pawn get to d4 and there'll be some tension between e5 and d4. It'll remain there for several moves. We'll see who ends up blinking first. Some standard moves coming in here. Follow up c3. There's not an issue winning a pawn here for white. That would be a losing move. Queen d4, familiar trap, targeting the knight in f2. It's c3. This knight is boxed out. He'll look to maneuver eventually towards the queen side. First it's d6. And from here, white castles, both sides castles from here. If you're wondering about this d4 move, it's not an issue for black. You could treat this in a couple ways. You could take or withdraw the bishop specifically to a7. So you could go with chop, chop, bishop check, or just fall back, hang on to this pawn still. d5 is not a problem because there is b5 to break the pin. You wouldn't have that if the bishop was on b6. And if this captures here, there's knight takes e4. All right, in this game, no d4. Both sides castle. No bishop g4 pin to worry about. White has the flight square. Bishop backs off. There's no way to prevent d4, so just a preemptive move here. d4 will now not hit with tempo. And now black is ready to just go ahead and improve this knight. That's what we see here with knight to e7 next up. If you're wondering about rook to e1, something other than rook to e1, for instance, bishop g5, how is black addressing this pin? In a committal way, h6 and g5. The sacrifice on g5 is not working out. This is how black will end up breaking the pin. This is a move black can look forward to from here. So, no pin in this game, no bishop g5, rook centers up, and we maneuver the knight just in time here on the queen side, supporting e5. The c-pawn is now free to advance in some lines because of this maneuver. No queen knight on c6, bishop c2, bishop d7, bishop e3. So this tension remains. Notice that black is not so quick to bite. Go ahead and capture here on d4. What do we have in the game? Rook e8. If you're capturing here, you would be helping white. This piece in particular would be helped. It has access now to its favorite square. So if you're going to initiate this capture, it's probably better to consider that after the knight has moved. All right, rook e8 in this game, knight d2. And sure enough, in this position, this is the first moment where the computer says if you want to go ahead and capture on d4, you could. Black doesn't play in that way. He continues here with a5. If you are going to capture in this way, this may be appealing for some of you who may be more experienced with a Benoni structure. You could take and now follow up with c5. If white plays d5 in response, there you go. We have a Benoni structure. This is a healthy queen side. Could see the capture, recapture. Black has control over this e5 push. All right, not the way black plays it. If you're going to give up that strong point and build white center right back up, you should be looking to influence it right away, and c5 is a way to do just that. In this game, really a game of inches, we have a5. And now nearby there's a4, potentially a slightly invasive pawn. White's reply here is with a4, says, you've gone far enough. I don't want you entering my house. What would this look like if white allowed the pawn to arrive on a4. Let me make a passing move. After a4, you can't take the pawn. This is the detail I want to highlight. It's poison. You take twice, your queen's going to be in jeopardy. Bishop takes d4 is there, attacking the queen. So a sequence like this is going to favor black, giving up the rook pawn, getting a center pawn in return. That's good news for black. This could be a bit of an invasive pawn. White says, you've gone far enough. From here, bishop c6, we're seeing some increased pressure now on e4. 3 attackers there, directly, indirectly. At any moment, there could be this capture, and there you go. Rook is on it. More defense over e4. More indirect pressure. This is where White goes into a bit of a think. He spends about 18 minutes at this moment and blinks. He ends up releasing the tension here, captures on e5. Computer says best is to improve a hair with the bishop, bishop d3. What other options does White have here? We're going to have a look at this bishop d3 line in just a bit. But if we consider another option besides the move in the game, the capture, if this pawn advances, this is good news for black. The bishop could capture here on e3, and it's saying it's best to take with the pawn, take on double pawns here in order to secure this jump on f4. This would be very good news here for black. Play could sharpen on the queen side with b4, c6 breaks. And if no pawns are touched on the queen side, here's a pretty neat plan here for black. One, to connect knights, and then it wants to scoot the king over, rook g8, and then shoot for a g5, g4 break. In this situation, going for an f5 break, you might see it as opening a file for a rook. Another way to view it is that you'd be helping this light square bishop that is currently not such a productive piece. A couple pawns fixed on light squares. That trade of dark square bishops with this line, that was White's good bishop for black's bad bishop, a very active bad bishop. So in short, this d5 push, establishing a pawn in black's house, not an issue for black. Now, the top line here for White is with bishop d3, and in response to this, it's saying make small improving moves, h6, queen c2 in the event of chop chop. The queen's eyes are opened up. There's also some tactical point in some lines where if there's a knight captured on d2, the queen is not hit by that knight. It's looking at these moves as follow-ups. Bishop planted on f1, securing or preparing to tame a knight once it's on f4. Here's the concern here, playing as White. Let me point this out. The concern is that there could be a pawn lost if you play in this way. But it turns out that going in for this pawn here would not be a good decision by black. So let me share what this pawn sacrifice line would look like. If bishop d3 and this capture on d4, White recaptures. And now, if you're going to take on e4, the best or the better way to do it is with the bishop. If you take with the knight in this position, that would be losing to d5 with tempo. And this clears the way for an eventual bishop captures bishop. There's going to be an issue here with the rook opposite the queen. How might this look? If you take on d2, bishop recaptures, and there you go. Queen is hit. Bishop is still hit here on c6. If you take on d5, there is knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, bishop takes bishop. White is coming out ahead. White's up the piece. Bishop takes bishop, no problem. We recapture yet again an issue with the queen. She moves, the bishop rescues itself. Okay. The way to track down a pawn after these chops on d4 would be, therefore, with the bishop. Now, the star move in this position would be bishop g5. Now, what's going to happen shortly? Black will end up with a completely wrecked kingside structure. There's no way around it. There's an issue here with this bishop being pinned. The only way out of the pin is to take on d3, would be to take on d3. And now, what do? If you go home, you're still in a pin. White can follow rook takes rook, queen takes rook, and then chop away on f6. Best play from here is queen d7. You take on f6, and there you go. In this position, what are we looking at? Well, one where black is up the pawn, but that's a big problem. These are 4 holes now on black's king side, and there are a few pieces that can certainly angle themselves to take advantage of these weaknesses. Knight e4, g3, f5 is looking extra appealing. Once that knight is there, who's going to tell that knight it's only worth 3? Not me. That's going to be a super strong piece. Certainly compensation here for white, this pawn sacrifice line. It likes white here by close to a pawn. All right. White in this game releases the tension, blinks first here with this tension, takes on e5. Exchange, good for bad bishop. That's good news for black as well. This is a reason to have held that tension for a bit longer. And let's see how we maneuver the pieces here, playing within this slightly different pawn structure. Black has an eye on the c5 square, no d4 pawn around. Knights are connected, maybe a possible jump here. So some more improving moves, slow, steady progress. The rook, not so purposeful on a7. It was just there to recapture a bishop. Eyeing up f4, maybe a d5 jump. Rook centered. Fight over d5 from here. More pressure maintained on e5, or a second attacker, I should say, on e5. And here we get some action on the queen side. So I want to take note of the clock times. This plays a big role in the game. Black has managed his time better, a good half hour more than white at this point. And he's not so quick to initiate the capture in this situation either. The rook simply returns to a8 here. Keeps this tension. We have another standoff here between the pawns. Some more maneuvering. And from here we get the following move, knight to e3. So I have 2 questions here. I'll answer one of them. What is this last move doing? And what is it no longer doing? What is it doing? Well, it has its eye. It's ready to jump on d5. It's coordinating well with the pawn. All right, black covers that jump. Now, what is it no longer doing? I'm not going to give that answer away just yet. Follow-up from here is b5. Notice the timing of certain moves. b5 is played only after this knight has drifted away from the c5 square. So if you want to get back to c5, white says you're going to have to work a little bit harder, invest some more time to reroute that knight. These are really fine points. It's a game. How this one's playing out, it's a game of inches. Bishop falls back. c4. There we go. Knight d7 into c5 maybe. Follow up is knight to d5. Pop quiz. How would you continue here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, the better move rather than knight d5 is rook a to d1. Now earlier, when this knight went to e3, I said, what is it doing? Was it no longer doing? Well, it's easy to overlook tactics when there has been, for all these moves now, 34 moves have been played up until this point. Easy to overlook tactical opportunities. There is a tactical liability in White's camp ever since this move has been played. And that is this guy. It's been unprotected ever since knight went to e3. Black is now able to take advantage of this. Rook a to d1 is best. Defends that knight, puts it on an open file. What was overlooked? Well, after this move, knight d5, black has the tactic, knight takes h3, check. You could also first chop the knight and then go in for this tactic on h3. What's the story here? After this capture, White plays king f1 here. If it's accepted, black can follow with bishop takes knight, and there we go. The queen gets to g5 with check, and the knight down for the count. So this was missed, this tactic, I believe, given the clock situation here. He has about, White has 5 minutes, he spent about, a minute and a half maybe, plays king to f1. He's down a pawn, but he's not going to go down without a fight. We're going to see an interesting idea here by White. First, swipe that knight in the center, reposition the knights. Interesting rook lift. It's going to do a good job, this rook, of swinging over in some cases, also taming the knight. It's going to get to the c5 square. It watches over a couple knight jumps. Bishop watches over the knight pretty well, too. All right, from here, f6, king e2, and king d1. That's move 40. Met time control, 50 minutes bonus time. Move 40 here for black. Rook back to a8. And from here we get king to c1, g3, and White right away gets on with this break f4 in this position. Now, White is down a pawn, but there are these imbalances, opposite sides castles, as well as the minor piece imbalance. The bishop is better than the knight. I normally wouldn't say that. I see the knight as the aggressor, the bishop the defender, but this bishop has more potential. And we're going to see that after this f4 break. A couple chops. This pawn is then live. It has the option to move. And once it moves, the bishop's eyes are extended to f5 and a square right in front of that king. So it's not going to be so easy here for black. There's definitely ways to go wrong. White carries on with f4 straight away. Computer's leaning towards first king to b1. White goes straight in for f4. Now, I'm not sure if this was intended or not. After these next couple of moves, another pawn is now going to be tracked down. Rook takes pawn is there. Black is now up 2 pawns, and this guy's poisoned. Queen takes rook would be there. Tough to say if this was intended or not. I mean, I had a look at the clock times when looking here, 33 minutes. Then he played f4, chop, chop, rook takes pawn, and then his next move is knight f3. So what did he spent about 5 minutes on this move. Would 5 minutes have been spent after this decision? I'm not quite sure if it was the blunder of a pawn, but as it turns out, there's still going to be some play here. As mentioned, this pawn now has the option to move. Bishop's eyes will open up. Follow up, knight f3. Rook h5 is played here. Computer doesn't see that as best. It's saying best is to stay on the d file. And the idea is to now meet e5 with f5. So this runs a bit deep here, a point behind having the rook on this d file. It's prepared, it's saying after this discover check, it says just hide over here. And the idea is that if the knight is captured, let's see what this looks like. If the knight is captured, there would be a queen sacrifice. Chop, chop, and in the end, the queen will be won back. We keep this guy around to watch over the pawn, and we track the queen down. So this is at least one of the ideas behind keeping this rook on the d file. Black's approach, keep it on the 5th rank. Watch over multiple pawn breaks. From here it is e5, chop, double up on the e file, and from here we have knight d7. So this is now considered an even position. The only winning move here for black is king to h7, apparently. Gets off of this pin and, well, goes into another. King h7 is considered best. Now, if this was played, if this best move was played, and there was a capture here with the pawn, you could blockade. Knight to e6 is a strong follow-up, not allowing this pawn to go any further, not allowing this square to open up for 4 pieces. And in the event of a piece capture on this square, let's see what this looks like. It's easy for black to go wrong in such a position. This one right here in particular. Black would find himself in yet another only move situation that maintains a decisive advantage. And that move would be, in this position, king g8. Getting out of the way the bishop, getting out of the way the queen. It does seem like g8 is going to be the safest. Watch how easy it would be for black to slip up here. You ready? First of all, chopping on f5, that would be a disaster. Hitting the queen, and next up the rook is going to move, and there's going to be a problem there on the diagonal. Discovered check nearby. And if you play g5, you ready? White would all of a sudden be winning with this star move, rook e6. That's a really beautiful move. Take with the rook or the knight. White recaptures, says check, and next, thank you for the queen. Has an eye on g6 from here, just to play out a couple more moves, just to show you another cute tactic. Let's say the rook goes here. That's pretty much ball game. Rook e7 is going to win the queen. Chop, push, discovered check, the queen is down for the count. So, we don't see this top move in this position right here, king to h7. Instead, it is direct defense over e5. Follow up, pawn takes pawn. Knight f takes e5. Position is considered level. White has fought back, even though black is up 3 pawns, it still considers this even. This is a really strong bishop here on c2. It's pointing right at a square next to the king. It's providing some cover for the king. What do we have from here? It's rook d1, knight f6, rook 1 to e1. We're repeating moves a little bit, but Nodirbek says, let's play on. And he's right to do so. He plays king h7 here, gets out of the pin. He is up 3 pawns after all, and up about 25 minutes on the clock. So he keeps the pressure on king h7, and from here queen c3 is played. Has an eye on c7. Best, considered an only move here, keep this level, is king b1. Now, how do you view king to b1? You do duck a knight move with check. There is a deeper point that will be revealed. Really difficult to see from this point right here. The king is going to be more secure on b1 rather than c1. We get queen c3, knight f6, and from here, rook to g1. So white's really just going for it at this point. Doesn't have a lot of time, 2 minutes. He spent about a minute playing rook to g1. He knows that this fork is right around the corner. If white tries to return here, applying pressure to the knight, this is a fine response. Defense, attack, a nice forward response, and the queen can next look to get off of the F file, or excuse me, the E file. All right, in this one, it's rook G1. What is White's idea? Well, he's targeting G6, and we see just that. Takes with check. You only have one move now to maintain a decisive advantage. King H8 is played here. You certainly don't want to walk into the G file. Discovered check nearby. It says you could take with the knight and give up the queen, and that's apparently still, well, it's going to be a draw. But the win here is King H8, back into a pin, but ducking the follow-up discovered checks. Queen moves, knight takes rook, bishop takes the 5th rank rook, and now we see an only move that's winning, Queen A3 check. Was this a reason earlier the computer wanted to have that king on B1? This hits really hard now, and there's just not going to be a good response to it. These pieces are way too active. A queen and just a single knight is dangerous enough, and there's 2 knights here. Even though one is currently pinned, a 4th piece can easily enter the scene. Now, what are White's options here? In the game, he goes to D2. If the queen blocks, you could exchange queens and follow up with a check, rook here. The extra material is definitely felt in this more simplified position. A knight getting to this square is looking pretty good, going hunting for a pawn. 2, what would we have here if this position arrived? We're looking at 2 octopus knights. These are all the squares these knights cover. It almost looks like I'm exaggerating. That's a lot of ground for these 2 knights to cover. Good luck, Team White. All right. White cannot afford a queen exchange. He cannot afford, really. There's no good move here for White. It's King D2 in this game. And one final move, Knight F5. White resigns. Queen is under fire. We have 2 off-the-hook active pieces, and a third, one of these 2, will soon enter in on the attack. So what would White's options be here? I'll touch on a few of them. If the queen goes here, there you go. The rook enters the scene with check. King has to stay glued to the queen. Follow up knight E3 check, and next up the queen would be lost. If the queen goes to the corner, maintaining this pin, there you go. The rook enters. The queen could post up here. What an invasive square that is. And then knight D4 is very strong. Rook F8 is nearby. A mate threat is already there. There's no saving this. Finally, if we look at one other option here for White, let's say the queen goes here, stopping the rook from entering. You could take the knight and then give this check on B2. 2 options for the king. You go here, running into a fork. Thanks for the queen. And if you step up, you are definitely asking for trouble. You would, in this position, need 2 hands to count all the mate in ones. No hope here, playing in this way as White. So we only go as far as knight F5 here, and White resigns. So that tactical shot earlier on H3, I believe it was overlooked. That tactical liability, a knight on D2 being unprotected. But White made the best of a difficult situation. These top players do not go down without a fight, and that was definitely a fight. This little king walk over here to the queen side eventually got to a point where it was back to even. Very interesting game, positional and tactical. Anyhow, what are your thoughts on this one? Feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.